All right, so without preamble, I'm just going to get into the article. Court rules Idaho can partially enforce its abortion trafficking law. Which, that sounds great. Oh, I forgot to make this bigger so I can read it. So I don't have to cut off my head to read. A federal appeals court ruled on Monday that Idaho can partially enforce its abortion trafficking law, which prevents adults from harboring or transporting minors out of the state to terminate a pregnancy without their parents' consent. Now, on the surface, that sounds reasonable, right? But unfortunately, we have learned that not all parents are reasonable. So, if a child does not have a good relationship with their parents, why on earth would they need their parents' permission to do something? They should find a trusted adult to give them permission to do that. Because not all parents have a good relationship with their kids because they are just horrible, horrible parents. Now, it could be that just the kid is being unreasonable. That's, there are some kids that have a bad relationship with their parents because the kid is being unruly and unreasonable. But in cases like this, it's the parents. It's definitely the parents. The law, the first of its kind in the country, went into effect in May of 2023. It was blocked in November of that same year after plaintiffs sued the state, saying the law impedes on basic rights. And Idaho is the same state that's saying, you need emergency care because you're dying, your pregnancy is killing you. That's just too damn bad. So, they have a great track record when it comes to caring about women. The statute defines the crime of abortion trafficking as helping procure an abortion or an abortion-inducing drug for an unemancipated minor by recruiting, harboring, or transporting the pregnant minor within the state. Okay, so does that include sending abortion drugs to the house? Because if you're a friend of the family and the kid comes to visit and, oh gee, I just got this abortion drug that you asked for, is that part of the law? Because they're not doing any of that. Now, recruiting, harboring, or transporting the pregnant minor within the state assumes that these evil adults are tricking these poor kids who are pregnant into having an abortion, as opposed to the kid, not wanting to be pregnant. Because I know that consent is a big deal, but as I mentioned I don't know if in previous videos or just in the comments, but this could be taken into an extreme. So minors can't consent to getting braces or having a broken bone mended because they can't consent to anything. So if the parent decides that their kid isn't going to get braces, then they're not going to get braces. I'm not talking about the cost now. I'm talking about, they don't need it. So this could get really stupid really quickly. Now, when it comes to their own bodies, kids have known from the get-go, basically, what they feel comfortable with. I remember when one of my nephews I leaned in when he was, I think, 2. I leaned in for a kiss. Backs away. Okay, he doesn't want me to kiss him. Great, I'm not going to do it. Are you saying that I should have forced this because he can't consent? He doesn't know his own body? No, that's stupid. So we're getting to the point with children can't consent, to the point, I'm sure some of these are trolls, God, I hope some of these are trolls, that we now can force children to do what we want because they can't consent to anything. So because they can't consent to anything, we're going to force things on them rather than letting them make decisions for themselves. Now, so yeah, that's just crazy and stupid. And this is basically a part of that. Kids can't consent because kids can't consent, it's obviously the adult who's forcing this on them because kids can't have no thoughts in their head. There's a difference between someone being too young to consent to something like sex, especially sex with an adult, is not the same as I don't want this thing growing in my body, or I want my teeth straightened, or I fell and broke my arm, I'm going to get it mended. There's a big difference between those two things, and to assume that it's the adult's idea for a child to get an abortion when they actually are the ones who want it. Considering that in the same situation, a teenage girl seducing an adult because they look like they're adults, and then it's the adult who gets into trouble. Same thing. Why are you assuming that, why are you assuming that it's just the adults? Teenagers can be scheming. They can do anything an adult can do, for the most part. So when it comes to being horrible people, so why is it so hard to believe, like a child murdered? Well, okay, if by your rules they didn't know what they were doing because they're kids, then we should never ever try any child as an adult in any circumstance. So, yeah, there are certain circumstances where the child should be allowed to make adult decisions, which, like in this case, if they don't want, why is she pregnant? Chances are that, it could be that her teenage boyfriend got her pregnant. That's always a possibility. But more often than not, it's probably going to be as a result of rape and or incest. So why are we then saying that the child can't consent to deciding what happens with their body? Because this is probably the same adult who they turn to for help in dealing with the situation that got them pregnant in the first place. So we have situations where we treat children like adults. So we can't just have this blanket, they can't consent. Because it depends on the situation. Kids know what gender they are. Kids know for the most part, they know what sexual orientation they are. They might be confused and go through stages because the world around them might be telling them, oh, you can't be this because it's sinful or it's bad or whatever the hell they do. But they know deep down who they are attracted to. If they find boys cute, if they find girls cute, if they don't find anyone cute in that way. That they might find them cute in the same way they find puppies cute, or they find pictures beautiful or whatever. So they know from an early age. They have at least the beginnings of an understanding. Like, who do they find cute? And in what ways do they find them cute? Whether they feel like they just feel more comfortable talking to boys, or whether they feel like they are a boy, or feel like they are a girl, or just feel more comfortable talking with and hanging out with boys or girls. That's all something they figure out from an early age, what their likes and dislikes are. If we take consent to its ridiculous extreme, then children shouldn't be able to know that either. They're just sitting there drooling like morons because they're just waiting for an adult to tell them what to think, how to feel. That's just not how consent works. And I went way off tangent. Okay. So, plaintiff's attorney Lords Matsumoto and the nonprofit groups Northwest Abortion Access Fund and the Indigenous Idaho Alliance argued the law prevents them from counseling or sharing information with minors seeking legal abortions out of state, going against the plaintiff's constitutional rights to free expression. They say it also infringes the right to travel and the right to freely associate. Exactly. Because again, what if a child figures out that this teacher or this family friend or relative or whatever who happens to be an adult is willing to listen to their issues and they trust them more than their parents to help with certain situations, well, who are you to say that they're not allowed to hang out with them? The right to free expression, I don't know about that one. But, if by free expression you mean seeking out information about abortion or going to a clinic to learn about their options, well, yeah, in that case, yeah, they should have the right to go to clinics and make informed decisions. That's actually a grown-up thing to do. To weigh all their options and decide what works best for them. Whether it's an abortion, or adoption, whatever. Whatever they decide to do, that should be between them and a trusted adult. Whether that be a doctor, whether it be a parent, whether it be some other relative, a teacher, we all have, well, most of us have adults that at some point in our lives we felt close to, that we could tell them things, that maybe that was your parent, but not everybody has that. Not everybody has the parent as someone they feel comfortable talking to, especially about situations like I'm pregnant, and I don't want to be pregnant, or I'm gay, or I'm trans, or whatever the situation is. I'm asexual. Sometimes parents just don't get it. Whether it's because they have their head so far up their own ass, assuming that their kid is this perfect being that they can mold into a little mini me, and they must make the same decisions that their parents would make. And if they diverge in any way, that the parent will just lose their shit. And if the kid feels that that's the kind of parent they have, why are you going to force them to seek their advice when it's dangerous to do so? Anyway, the Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in San Francisco ruled that harboring and transporting were not forms of speech and partially lifted the injunction. I have to admit that is true. That is not a form of speech. Now I still have a problem with the words harboring, because that to me sounds like grooming. This idea that kids would just lie there dumbly and wait for the baby to come until an adult says, you should have an abortion. Oh, okay. And completely not caring either way what happens to them, what happens to their relationships, or anything, what happens to their bodies. Not how this works. And transporting, yeah, okay, I will admit that is not a form of speech, but I think that falls under their right to freely associate. If they want to hop in a car with a friend who happens to be an adult, and that adult just happens to be driving them to an abortion clinic or to their house so they can pick up the meds that they ordered, which they don't feel comfortable at coming to the house, that's still them deciding to associate with that adult. So, in the opinion, Judge M. Margaret McEwen wrote, recruiting, however, represented a large swath of expressive activities which can include encouragement, counseling, and emotional support, as well as education and information on available medical services. Exactly. That part of the law remains blocked as the case continues to make its way through the courts. And yeah, because they should get information and make informed choices. That's what we want our kids to do. That's what we want anybody to do. To take as much information about a situation in so they can make proper choices. What is in the best interest of them? If that happens to be giving birth and raising a baby, great. If it means giving birth and putting the baby up for adoption, great. But if they feel that they don't have the finances, or they just don't feel like they can handle being pregnant, and they decide to have an abortion, they should learn as much as they can about their options. Okay, this is the stage you're at. These are your options. This is what will happen if you choose to have an abortion. That should be talked about, because they should be aware of what is the consequence of each option. They should know that. McEwen also wrote that Idaho's police powers do not extend to abortions legally performed outside the state. Under the trafficking statute, those prosecuted can face a minimum of 2 years in prison. And then there's that. This idea, and I'm sure that the people who made this law are screaming states' rights. Your state does not get to tell other states what to do. So if someone goes to another state to have an abortion because your state doesn't allow it, you cannot penalize that person anymore because it's outside of your jurisdiction. Just like police have a certain jurisdiction that once a fugitive crosses county lines or state lines or whatever kind of police you are, you are no longer able to pursue them. You have to call law enforcement that is within that jurisdiction and hope that they're willing to help out. And they usually are. Because crime is crime is crime. Unless it's not. What's criminalized in one state isn't criminalized in another. Well, then you can't do shit. There was something else I wanted to say. Oh, yes, this reminds me of, I believe it was the Dred Scott case, where, now, it ended badly for Dred Scott, but it brought up the issue of he was a runaway slave who ran away to a free state. But Southerners, who I might point out, will scream states' rights. Apparently that doesn't compute if it's a state right that they don't like. Oh, you're a free state? Well, that's just too bad. My rights trump yours because reasons. So, it's the same thing here. Just once a person leaves a state, you no longer have jurisdiction over that person. It's like, to use a mundane example, say you're an 18-year-old and you go to, I think it's Canada. I believe the drinking age in Canada is 18. Actually, I think we're pretty much the only country that, well, allows drinking, that the drinking age is 21. So if they were to go to Canada or Mexico and they were to drink, and then they came back to the U.S., you can't do anything. You can't prosecute them for drinking underage because that was not under your jurisdiction. They were in a different country. So, same thing here. Just because your state doesn't allow something doesn't mean other states don't. That's why, say, in my state of Wisconsin, people who want to get access to cannabis, whether it's just for medical reasons or just to get high, they have to go to Minnesota or Illinois, and they can buy it there. So, but Wisconsin can't prosecute them because when they come back, because they have no jurisdiction. As long as they don't have it on their persons and they're not using, Wisconsin can't do anything. So, yeah. It's just, that's just the way it is for having different states having different laws. You just can't force another state to follow your laws. This is a tremendous victory for Idaho, and defending the rule of law is written by the people's representatives, said Attorney General Raul Labrador in a statement. So I guess the parts that were left in place was good enough for him. Okay, cool. Planned Parenthood Regional Director Misty Deli Carpini Tolman, holy crap, that's a long last name, called the ruling frightening. Simply protecting speech doesn't address the criminalization of essential acts of support, she said. It doesn't address the broader chilling effects on speech by people who might be afraid of potential misinterpretation or prosecution. This idea of surveilling citizens and trying to track their movements, where they're going, what they're doing. These are not American principles, Delhi, Carpini, Tolman added. And it's really, really concerning precedent that's being set. And that is true. But and that's why I didn't like the language of harboring or transporting. Because, okay, say you're a 16-year-old or a 15-year-old and you're hanging out with an adult, whether it be a teacher, a relative, a neighbor who you just happen to be friends with, because teenagers, actually children in general, are allowed to be friends with adults. That's perfectly fine. So, and you see two people together and just assume that they're going for an abortion, and you're going to play 20 questions with the kid or the adult to make sure that that's not happening. Yeah, I can see where that is a problem. But as I've mentioned before, Idaho doesn't seem to give a shit about women, so that tracks. Idaho bans abortions in most cases, with exceptions for rape and incest and when the life of the mother is in danger. And I pointed out previously in previous videos that the problem with abortion bans with exceptions, because then doctors are afraid, well, I see this as a legit exception, but what if the lawyers do not? And that is frightening, because then you're going against your instincts to help someone simply because you're afraid of the consequences. And that is not the way to practice medicine. You cannot practice medicine looking over your shoulder, worried that somebody is going to go after you for helping a patient. So, and people, actually, that's why so the Supreme Court had to rule on whether their laws are in violation of federal law. I can't remember what the federal law, EMTALA. So, and the judges, being fucking cowards, kicked the can down the road. But so if you consider exceptions to be caring about adults, caring about women, they're not. Because, again, you might think it's clear cut, but we've seen examples of lawyers not seeing the things the same way as doctors do, and somehow the lawyers should know better than doctors what constitutes health of the mother. So, the trafficking law allows the Attorney General to bring charges if county prosecutors choose not to do so. Oh, great. So even if you're a county prosecutor who thinks that the law is just stupid and they're not going to go after every teenage girl who happens to be hanging out with an adult who isn't a parent, which, how would you know that just by looking? I mean, this just is so stupid. This is just asking for trouble. This is just asking for all women to be suspect. All women are going to be looked at as if you associate with anyone at any time as you must be pregnant and you are angling for an abortion and we need to stop you. This could get bad so quick. And I'm sure it's gotten bad already. So anyway, that is the end of that article. And with that, I will see you guys in the next video.